The mountain air trembled beneath the wedding drums, thick with incense and unease. Every villager stood beneath the paper lanterns, faces painted in red joy that barely masked dread. The ritual was old, older than any of them remembered, and tonight it demanded perfection. The bride moved slowly toward the altar, her dress gleaming like fresh blood beneath the storm-lit sky. Thunder murmured in the distance, echoing the whispers of elders who refused to speak the ritual's real name. As the chanting deepened, the torches bent in the wind, and for a heartbeat, all light died. When it returned, the red fabric crumpled soundlessly to the ground, empty, swaying as if it still breathed. The silence that followed was unbearable, thick, wet, and humming with disbelief. The villagers stared as the dress shifted gently in the wind, its empty sleeves lifting as though unseen arms still occupied them. Someone screamed, and then everyone was shouting, moving, praying, denying what they saw. Shen Wei's throat locked as he reached for the silk, but Master Liang struck his hand away, warning him not to touch it. The old man's voice trembled as he muttered words meant to calm the dead, not the living. The storm broke open above them, drenching the courtyard, smearing red dye into the soil. Beneath the thunder, the veil of rain whispered, a faint voice, soft and broken, calling the groom's name from somewhere no one could see. By dawn, the dress was brought into the Shen household and placed before the ancestral altar. No one slept. Madame Shen insisted it be treated as if her daughter-in-law were still within it. Offerings of tea, rice, and incense lined the table. Shen Wei sat motionless beside the folded silk, unable to meet its hollow shape. The walls of the house seemed to breathe with the storm's aftershocks, the wooden beams creaking like sighs. Every few minutes the candlelight bent toward the dress, as if drawn by invisible motion. And then, faint but unmistakable, a drop of water fell from the empty sleeve, clear, cold, and tinged faintly red. At first, they thought exhaustion was playing tricks on them. But when the wind died, the sound remained. A faint rustling that came not from the window, but from within the silk. Shen Wei leaned closer, his breath trembling. The sound grew louder, a whispering rhythm, like fabric being caressed by unseen hands. Then came the voice, soft, strained, barely audible, calling his name with the cadence of his bride's laughter, but wrong, hollow, distant. He stumbled back, overturning the candle. Madame Shen screamed as wax splattered across the floor, but even through the chaos the voice persisted. "Finish what you began," it said, fading as the flame went out. Morning arrived, gray and shrouded in mist. The villagers avoided the Shen house, crossing the street in silence. Rumors spread faster than the river fog, that the bride's spirit had been claimed by the mountain, that the ritual had been performed incorrectly, that the dress now held her soul. Shen Wei locked himself inside, staring at the folded silk that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking. On the third day, he found a footprint in the courtyard, bare, wet, and small, leading from the altar to the doorway, and then vanishing into the rain. The villagers whispered that the dress had begun to breathe. No one dared approach the Shen household after dark, yet they swore the windows glowed faintly red, pulsing like a heart. Shen Wei, hollow-eyed and sleepless, spent each night beside the altar, listening to the low hum that seemed to rise from the silk itself. The sound had rhythm, like breathing, like sighing, and in it, her voice, sometimes soft, sometimes pleading, sometimes laughing in a way that made his blood run cold. When dawn came, the house reeked of damp earth, as though something had crawled from the river and lingered inside. At the temple's edge, the villagers gathered in hushed debate. Master Liang's hands trembled as he read old scriptures by lantern light, his face ghostly beneath the wavering flame. He muttered of bridal pacts, rituals meant not for union but for binding spirits, an exchange between the living and those who lingered. Madame Shen refused to listen, insisting the dress was a sign of faith, not of curse. Yet the priest's words struck deep. Even the elders crossed themselves with salt and talismans as he spoke. They all knew the truth. The mountain never gives back what it takes. It only sends warnings. That night, Shen Wai dreamed of the wedding again, but this time the guests were gone. The sky was black, the torches dead, and the altar glowed faintly under the mountain's mist. He saw the dress floating midair, sleeves lifted as if dancing in slow rhythm. When he called her name, the veil turned, and from beneath it came not her face, but the hollow of a skull filled with water lilies. He woke gasping, drenched in sweat, to find the red silk spread neatly across his chest. The fabric was cold and wet, as though it had been left outside in the rain. Xiao Ming, restless and guilt-ridden, returned to the shrine with his camera. He had developed the photo from the wedding, and what he saw haunted him. The instant before the flash, the bride's body had begun to dissolve into smoke. He wanted proof of what lingered now. The courtyard was silent, the air sharp with the scent of wet earth. When he lifted his camera, something shimmered through the lens, the red dress hanging from the altar beam, swaying gently though no wind stirred. He took the shot, and the sound of the shutter seemed to wake the mountain. By dawn, Xiao Ming's photograph developed into something unholy. The image showed not one dress but two, one standing beside the other, both veiled, one translucent. He brought it to Master Liang, who stared long into it before speaking. "She was not taken," the old man whispered. "She was replaced." Outside, thunder rolled again over the mountains. In the Shen household, the red dress had moved on its own, now facing the door, as though waiting for someone to enter. Master Liang sat before his altar, long into the night, the photograph lying beside an open scripture, whose ink had begun to bleed from his trembling hands. His lips moved in prayer, yet the words fell hollow, their power drained by something older than faith. He remembered another wedding, decades ago, another bride who had vanished into mist during a similar ritual. That family had fled, abandoning the shrine, sealing its doors in silence. His bones ached with the weight of what he had done to protect the village. He knew now that the ritual was not a blessing, but a pact, one that demanded renewal every generation, in red, rain, and silence. Madame Shen arrived at the temple before dawn, barefoot, her eyes swollen from weeping. She confessed through chattering teeth that the ritual had been her idea, that she had begged Master Liang to perform it, to bind her son's fate, to Lin Yu after the woman's sudden illness before the wedding. She feared losing her, feared her son's loneliness. But the priest's face drained of color as she spoke. She had unknowingly invoked the bridal sealing, a ritual meant to trap restless souls, not heal the living. "You called something to witness the vow," he said. "Now it wants to finish it." Now it wants to finish it. That night, Shen Wai found the red dress missing again. He tore through every room, calling her name into the wind. Then faint laughter echoed from the backyard near the ancestral pond. When he rushed outside, the lanterns ignited by themselves, reflecting crimson across the water's still surface. The dress floated there, perfectly upright, its veil rippling though there was no wind. He reached for it, his fingers brushing the silk, and for a moment he swore he felt her heart beat beneath the fabric. Then came the whisper, "Come back to me." The water rippled, and the reflection beneath the dress smiled. Master Liang's strength failed him. He collapsed mid-prayer, choking on the incense smoke that thickened like fog around him. Through the haze, he saw the faces of the dead brides painted on the temple wall come alive, smiling, whispering his name. They thanked him for the ceremony, for keeping the gate open. With his last breath, he scrawled a talisman in blood on the floorboards, sealing what he could. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, carrying laughter that did not belong to the living. When the villagers found him the next morning, his eyes were open, fixed on the ceiling, as if still watching something descend. News of the priest's death spread quickly, and fear consumed the village. Madame Shen burned her household's ancestral tablets, declaring that no spirit, bride or otherwise, would claim her son. But as the fire roared, the dress began to sing. A low hum emanated from the silk, echoing the same chant the villagers had heard on the wedding night. The air grew cold. Windows rattled. The dress rose into the air, sleeves outstretched, veil fluttering in unseen wind. And from within it came Lin Yu's voice, soft and final. "You tried to bury me in ritual. Now you will marry me in death." The rain returned with vengeance, turning the village paths into black rivers. A child found it first. The red silk floating near the temple bridge, its hem tangled with reeds. But when they tried to lift it, the water convulsed as if alive, swallowing the cloth whole. That night, lanterns drifted down the river by the dozens, though no one had lit them. Shen Wai followed the current to the river bend, calling her name, his voice carried by thunder. And then he saw it, the red dress rising from the depths, perfectly arranged, its veil spreading across the water like a bleeding moon. When the storm passed, the dress remained, anchored to a submerged shape beneath the water. The villagers gathered in silence, their faces drawn tight with fear. Master Liang's temple was closed, his talisman now smeared into meaninglessness by the rain. Rumor said the bride's spirit had merged with the river, her sorrow bleeding into the current. That night, anyone who looked into the water swore they saw her reflection, gazing back, smiling faintly beneath the surface. Shen Wai sat at the bank for hours, whispering apologies until dawn, unaware of the pale hand rising just behind him. That night, the river sang. The villagers woke to the haunting melody, a woman's voice drifting through the mist, sorrowful and sweet. The sound came from the water, echoing between the bamboo groves and stone bridges. Some followed it in trance, their lanterns bobbing like fireflies along the shore. Shen Wai followed too, drawn by the voice that was both familiar and not. When he reached the bridge, he found the dress standing upright in the current, empty yet alive, its veil whispering against the surface. As he stepped closer, the reflection beneath him opened its eyes. As dawn approached, the villagers discovered a burial pit beneath the shrine, the remnants of dozens of brides, each adorned in faded red silk. Bones stacked neatly, each bound at the wrists with the same ceremonial ribbon. Master Liang's notes spoke of an ancient pact. Each generation offered one bride to the river to keep the mountain spirit at peace. Lin Yu's disappearance had broken the balance, awakening the forgotten dead. Now, the ritual demanded completion. Madame Shen fell to her knees, realizing she had chosen her own offering when she begged for the ritual's return. That evening, the red dress vanished from the river. The villagers prayed it was over, but Shen Wai knew better. He returned home to find the dress hanging before the ancestral altar once more, clean, dry, untouched by rain. It glowed faintly under the candlelight, its veil rippling in a wind that wasn't there. Beneath it, water pooled slowly on the floor, forming a perfect circle around the stool. As he knelt before it, the dress tilted its head toward him, just slightly, like a curious bride awaiting her vow. Sleep no longer came to Shen Wai. The red dress dominated every breath, its whisper echoing within his skull, soft as silk sliding over skin, commanding as prayer. He no longer feared it. He only wanted to see her again. The villagers pleaded for him to burn it, but he smiled through hollow eyes, saying she was waiting to finish what they began. That night, he drew a circle of salt around the altar and opened Master Liang's forbidden scripture. Thunder cracked outside and the house seemed to exhale. As he began the chant, the dress shuddered, rising like smoke, and the air filled with the scent of lilies and decay. As his voice deepened, something stirred. The candles bent inward, their flames drawn toward the silk. The air trembled, and from within the dress came a low hum. A sound not human, yet hauntingly familiar. Then the veil parted. Beneath it, water poured upward, shaping the outline of a woman's face. It was her. Lin Yu's expression was soft, loving, but her eyes were empty, deep as the river. "You promised," she whispered, and the sound cracked the glass lanterns. Shen Wei reached for her hand, only to feel the chill of rushing water spill across his chest, filling his lungs with her memory. Outside, the village erupted in chaos. The mist thickened until even the moon vanished. From every doorway came cries, names called out in desperate joy as long-dead relatives appeared at thresholds, smiling faintly, beckoning them outside. The boundary between the living and the departed had torn wide open. In the Shen courtyard, dozens of pale figures gathered, veiled and silent, each wearing a version of the red dress. They turned their hollow faces toward the ancestral hall, swaying as one, whispering the same vow, "Till the river takes us home." Madame Shen forced her way through the fog, clutching a burning torch and the last of Master Liang's talismans. She burst into the hall, screaming for her son to stop. But it was too late. The ritual had bound itself. The dress wrapped around Shen Wei's body like a lover's embrace, silk fusing to his skin, the sound of bones shifting beneath. His face turned toward her, calm, devoted, eyes like still water. "She's home," he whispered, and the dress drew him in completely. The torch slipped from Madame Shen's trembling hands as the red flame consumed the last light in the room. When dawn came, the fire was gone. The shrine, the dress, and Shen Wei had vanished. Only the smell of river lilies lingered, sweet and unbearable. The villagers searched the banks for days until they found him, half buried in silt, still dressed in soaked crimson fabric, his hands clasped as though in prayer. But his eyes were open, fixed on the current, and the water beneath him shimmered faintly red. That night, the river's song returned, joined by two voices, hers and his, rising together in eternal vow. The 7th day after the burning marked the end of Ghost Month, yet the village did not celebrate. The river had grown quiet, too quiet, its surface smooth as glass beneath the pale moon. But when the first lanterns were set afloat, their flames sputtered, not from wind, but as if each carried a secret breath. One by one, they drifted downstream, glowing crimson instead of gold. The villagers watched in silence as the water shimmered red, and a whisper rose from the current, soft, melodic. The same bridal chant from that cursed wedding night. Above it, faint laughter echoed from both banks. By midnight, the lanterns began to move against the current, as though drawn by invisible hands. The villagers gasped as the glowing lights gathered near the old bridge where Lin Yu vanished. The red glow intensified, spreading beneath the surface like blood through ink. Then came the voices, hundreds of them, each lantern carrying a different whisper, a memory, a vow. The sound swelled until it became a single mournful harmony, shaking the air, rattling the bamboo chimes, and turning the river into a moving scarlet mirror. Madame Shen clutched her chest, realizing too late that one of the voices was her son's. From the heart of the river rose a shape, human and not. The red dress appeared first, then the veil, then two figures entwined beneath the surface. Lin Yu and Shen Wei, their faces calm, their eyes closed as if in prayer. The villagers screamed, but the couple did not move. Instead, their joined hands lifted toward the sky, scattering the lanterns like startled birds. The chant turned into weeping, hundreds of unseen brides sobbing from the mist. When the red light faded, the river's surface was empty once more, save for one lantern drifting gently upstream, burning brighter than all the rest. The villagers fled that night, leaving the river to its silence. Only Madame Shen remained, kneeling by the bridge where her son's voice had vanished. The single surviving lantern drifted toward her, flickering weakly before settling at her feet. Inside it floated something small and white, a lotus flower perfectly preserved. She reached for it, and when her fingers brushed the water, A reflection appeared, her son and his bride standing behind her, smiling faintly. The lantern flame flared once, then extinguished itself, leaving her face lit only by the moon and her own reflection trembling in tears. At sunrise, the villagers returned to find the river bare, not a single lantern left. The current was calm, yet the color of the water shimmered faintly pink, as though stained with eternal dusk. The shrine's gate stood open, and upon its steps rested the red dress once more, folded neatly, spotless, dry. A single lotus lay beside it, its petals drifting open with the breeze. When the wind passed through the valley, it carried a sound too soft to name, half sigh, half vow. And the villagers knew the ritual had claimed its final pair. Years passed, but the story of the vanished bride never left the valley. The river grew shallow, its song softened by time, and the village rebuilt itself around silence. Children were warned never to wear red near the water, and no weddings were held in the month of ghosts. Yet, one evening, as mist rolled down from the mountains, a merchant passing through saw something strange. An old shrine, door creaking open on its own. Inside, the faint glow of candles flickered to life, and there, upon the altar, the red dress waited, folded as neatly as the day it had fallen. Word spread quickly, drawing the last few villagers back to the shrine they had long abandoned. Madame Shen, now frail and gray, insisted on seeing it for herself. She entered the hall alone, leaning heavily on her cane, the scent of sandalwood overwhelming her senses. When she reached the altar, she found not just the dress, but something else. A single black hair lying across the silk, long and unfamiliar. Her breath caught as the candles flickered, their light bending toward the fabric. Then came a faint whisper, "Mother." The cane fell from her hand. That night, the villagers heard the temple bell ring for the first time in years. They ran to the courtyard, but found the shrine doors sealed once more, the sound of chanting echoing faintly within. Some swore they saw movement through the cracks in the wood, a woman's silhouette in red, bowing before the altar. The bell tolled 7 times, then silence. When the doors were forced open at dawn, there was no sign of Madame Shen. Only her cane leaning beside the altar, and 2 sets of damp footprints leading out toward the river path. When the villagers followed the footprints to the river, they found 3 figures standing upon the water's surface, 2 in red, 1 in white. The wind stilled. The water did not ripple. The figures turned toward the shore, their faces serene, eyes black as night. Then, without a word, they stepped backward and sank beneath the surface, leaving the current smooth as glass. Moments later, hundreds of white lotus petals floated downstream, glowing faintly before dissolving into mist. From that day on, the river never reflected the sky again, only faces that went there. Now, travelers say the mountain path hums at dusk, carrying faint music like distant wedding bells. On nights of heavy rain, lanterns drift upstream against the current, leading to the old shrine that no longer appears on any map. Those who follow them claim to see the red dress displayed upon the altar, waiting patiently for its next wearer. And if they linger long enough, the veil lifts. A woman's voice whispers from the dark, gentle, familiar, and raw. "The ceremony isn't finished," she says. "The bride is waiting."